Start. Good afternoon to one and all. Today we'll be discussing on acid peptic disease, which is a very common disease which you come across in day-to-day practice in your family members. We ourselves might experience this acid peptic disease. So let's see in detail what is this disease. By definition, peptic ulcers are the areas of degeneration and necrosis of gastric intestinal mucosa exposed to acid peptic secretions. Though they can occur at any level of alimentary canal that is exposed to all hydraulic acid and pepsin, they occur most commonly in either duodenum or stomach. Duodenum and stomach are the two common areas where these peptic ulcers tend to occur. Types of peptic ulcer. Basically, depending on the site and on the duration, we divide it. Depending on the site, it's duodenal ulcer. Typically occurs in the first inch of the first part of the duodenum. Gastric ulcer occurs in the lesser curvature adjacent to acid secreting parietal cell mass. And there is other type combined, which is the gastric ulcer type 2 and the Zollinger-Ellison syndrome. Whereas coming to depending on duration, it is divided into chronic peptic ulcer and acute peptic ulcer. This is a pictorial representation. You can have a look at the location duodenum. You can see the duodenal ulcer and stomach. It's an ulcer. So basically, the stomach lining contains of mucosa, submucosa, and muscularis layer. This is a basic pathophysiology for an ulcer. In a normal patent mucosa, there will be damaging forces like gastric acidity, peptic ulcers, and there are defensive mechanisms like surface mucus secretion, bicarbonate secretion of the mucus, and apical membrane transport, epithelial regenerative capacity, and elaboration of prostaglandins. What causes injury to the mucosa is H. pylori infection, NSAID abuse, excess large doses of aspirin, smoking, alcohol, and gastric hyperacidity. And other mechanisms like ischemia, shock, delayed gastric emptying, and host factors, which ultimately leads to necrotic debris and non-specific acute inflammation, and ultimately it will lead to the fibrosis. What are the risk factors for Okay, let's start the risk factors for this acid peptic disease. The most common risk factor for this acid peptic disease is H. pylori infection and concomitant use of NSAIDs or corticosteroids, cigarette smoking, excessive use of alcohol. Stress is another important risk factor for acute peptic ulcer, like whether it can be of a psychological stress or physiological stress or any trauma, burns. All these tend to acute acid peptic disease. And excess secretion of stomach acid and strong family history of peptic ulcer also is a predisposing factor. About the organism, we shall see. Okay, let's see what is let's see about the H. pylori organism. It's a gram-negative organism, which is spiral in shape. Multiple flagella will be there. Streaked with flagella, which helps in quick movement in the gastric lumen. It uses as an adhesin molecule to bind to the Lewis B antigen on epithelial cells. Transmission route is by person-to-person by gastric reflex or vomiting. This is how the H. pylori looks like. The basic mechanism is when there will be depletion of antral D cells and simultaneous increase of gastrin release from the G cells, which in turn lead to increased acid secretion in the stomach or the duodenum, and it will lead to increased acid load in the duodenum, which ultimately leads to the gastric metaplasia. Further inflammation may eventually lead to ulceration or perforation also. Clinical features. Epigastric pain is the most common symptom, which around 60 to 70% of the patients experience. It is said that gastric ulcers present with pain associated or closely followed by eating, whereas duodenal ulcer pain is relieved by food. This is the main differentiating feature from gastric ulcer to duodenal ulcer. It is burning in nature. Patient awakens with pain at night. Pain may radiate to the brain. Other clinical features like dyspepsia and belching, distension, and fatty food intolerance, chest discomfort, anorexia, weight loss, and even in severe acid peptic disease, the patient might have a hematemesis, and rectal examination may show melena also. Peptic ulcers in the past tend to relapse and remit, and 70 to 80% of the ulcers relapse within 1 to 2 years after healing by medical therapy. The tendency to relapse is dramatically reduced by eradication of H. pylori. What are the investigations? How do you evaluate a patient of acid peptic disease or peptic ulcer disease? Endoscopy, wherever the facilities are available or specialized centers are available, you can refer to them for an endoscopy. And H. pylori detection by urea breath test or stool antigen test, and radiological investigations like chest X-ray, double contrast barium radiography. Some non-invasive studies like serum gastrin level, and the levels are more than 200 picograms per ml, it is highly indicative of acid peptic disease. Gastrin function studies measure, that is, we do measurement of gastric acid production. CBC, complete blood count, to know whether there is any blood loss of chronic. These are endoscopy pictures. This is a typical endoscope. You can see the flexible shaft transmitting light, air, and water. Another flexible shaft with the tip. There is an opening here. You can see this is an opening for vials and instruments. When you want to take a biopsy, or when you would like to do some procedure, you pass this guide wires or scissors through this. This is eyepiece, which is connected to the TV or monitor. Endoscopy can pass up to the duodenum. Yes, these are the tests for H. pylori. We can divide the tests into invasive and non-invasive. Invasive, we do it by either endoscopy or biopsy. Rapid urease, histology, and culture. Rapid urease is very simple, fast, and the sensitivity and the specificity is more compared to the other two. The only problem with the rapid urease test is the report can come as false negative with the recent use of PPIs, antibiotics, or bismuth compounds. Histology, it's a cumbersome process which requires pathology processing and staining. Culture, time consuming and expensive. It need a lot of time and manpower and other lab facilities and all. Non-invasive includes serology, which is inexpensive, convenient, but not useful for early follow-up. Urea breath test, simple, rapid, useful for early follow-up. False negative with the recent therapy of like PPA, antibiotics, or other bismuth compounds. Stool antigen is inexpensive and convenient. Which we usually follow is urea breath test, which we can do it on an OPD basis and easy. What are the complications of peptic ulcers? Bleeding is a common complication which we come across in majority of the patients with uncontrolled or untreated peptic ulcers. Pyloric stenosis is another one, and Zollinger-Ellison syndrome. These are the few common complications which we come across. Zollinger-Ellison syndrome, it's a rare syndrome, consists of triad of non-beta cell tumors of the pancreas that contain gastric acid hypersecretion and severe ulcer disease. The somatostatin analog octreotide is also effective, but has no clear advantage over PPAs. Pyloric stenosis, this is an incomplete gastric outlet obstruction may improve with several months of successful H. pylori eradication. Convenient treatment with acid suppressive therapy may be helpful. If medical therapy fails to relieve obstruction, endoscopic balloon dilatation or surgery may be required. A gastric and duodenal ulcer, we'll see. This is an exam point of view. This is important, and we'll see the main salient features. The prevalence of peptic ulcer is decreasing in many Western communities as a result of widespread use of H. pylori eradication therapy, but it still remains high in developing countries. The male to female ratio for duodenal ulcers vary from 5:1 to 2:1, whereas for gastric ulcers, it ranges from 2:1 or less. So these are the differentiating features for duodenal ulcer and gastric ulcers. The incidence for duodenal ulcer is 4 times more common than the gastric ulcer, and the usual age is between 25 to 50 years. That is from second decade to the 5th decade. Whereas coming to the gastric ulcer, it usually occurs beyond 6th decade, that is more than 60 years of age. More common in males in both the diseases, both types of ulcers. Etiology is the same for both H. pylori infection and hypersecretion of acid and pepsin, association with alcoholic cirrhosis, tobacco, and chronic pancreatitis for duodenal ulcer. Whereas for gastric ulcers, there will be association with gastritis, bile reflux, drugs like NSAID abuse and alcohol and tobacco use. Pathogenesis, there will be mucosal digestion from hyperacidity, and the productive gastric mucous barrier may be damaged. The same mechanism, the same line of pathogenesis for gastric ulcer too. The pathological changes, most common in duodenal ulcer, most common is the first part of the duodenum. Whereas in gastric ulcer, it is common along the lesser curvature and the pylori of Hadron. Often solitary, and it ranges from 1 to 2.5 centimeters in size, round to oval in shape, punched out edges in duodenal ulcer. Even the gastric ulcer also, the pathological features are very similar. Histologically, it is composed of 4 layers, necrotic, exudative, granulation tissue, and cicatrization. Even the gastric ulcer also has similarly 4 layers. Common complications with duodenal ulcers are hemorrhage, perforation, and obstruction. Whereas coming to gastric ulcer, malignancy, you must always bear in mind when an elderly person comes to you with a gastric ulcer for a long duration, just the rule of malignancy. Clinical features, when you on taking food, the pain is relieved. Night pain is common. There will be no vomiting. Melena is more common than hematemesis in duodenal ulcer. There won't be any obvious weight loss. No particular choice of diet like fried food, curries, etc. Marked seasonal variation will be there in duodenal ulcer. Occurs more commonly in people at greater stress. Whereas coming to the gastric ulcer, on taking food, the pain will aggravate. There will be no night pain, no vomiting might be there. Hematemesis is more common than melena in gastric ulcer. Significant weight loss will be there, and deep tenderness in the midline of the epigastric, that is epigastric tenderness will be there. There won't be any seasonal variation. More often in laboring groups. How do you manage these acid peptic disease? That is both duodenal ulcer and gastric ulcer. First, you must relieve the symptoms. Then you must plan for the healing of ulcer. Prevent recurrence of the ulcer. Prevent the complications. Out of all this, H. pylori eradication is the cornerstone of the therapy. H. pylori eradication is the main cause for decreased incidence in the Western population. So always you must bear in mind and suspect the H. pylori infection whenever a patient comes to you with an epigastric pain or symptoms such as duodenal ulcer or gastric ulcer. What are the drugs? How do you treat peptic ulcer? The drugs are aimed at eradicating H. pylori infection or restoring balance between the acid and pepsin secretion and the GI mucosal defense. These drugs include systemic antibiotics, antacids, H2 receptor antagonists, PPIs, and other peptic drugs such as misoprostol and sucralfate. PPIs disrupt chemical binding in the stomach cells to reduce the acid production, lessening irritation and allowing peptic ulcers to heal. What are the common drugs we use in day-to-day practice? Or omeprazole, rabiprazole, pantoprazole, lansoprazole, and esomeprazole. Usually we give a double dose, that is high dose of PPS we administer initially. If necessary, we start an infusion or acute episodes. H2 receptor antagonists, those are cimetidine, ranitidine, famotidine, and nizatidine. When you tend to when you want to reduce PPIs, you reduce the dose and later shift to the H2 receptor antagonist. Do not stop the PPIs abruptly, which may result in increased acid secretion once again, and it may further damage the mucosa. So always taper the dose of PPIs, then gradually shift to H2 antagonists. Antacids. Over-the-counter medications that include are magnesium hydroxide and aluminum hydroxide, sodium bicarbonate, calcium carbonate, and samethicone. These are the common antacids which patients tend to use by buying over the counter. This is a pictorial representation of strategies for protecting the gastric mucosa from acid exposure. We inhibit the acid secretion by giving either PPIs or H2 receptor antagonists or prostaglandins or muscarinic antagonists. And we prevent the contact by giving sucralfate or we neutralize the acid by giving antacids. How do you eradicate? Eradication of H. pylori is a most important step in the management of acid peptic disease. These are the latest guidelines for H. pylori eradication. That is, different regimes are available. Those are clarithromycin triple regimen, which includes a standard or double dose of PPA, clarithromycin 500 mg, amoxicillin 1 gram, or metronidazole 500 mg TID, which we give for a duration of 14 days. And this is the only regimen approved by FDA. When there is a allergic to the above said antibiotics, or patient is already defaulter or doesn't respond to the above triple regimen, then we may consider the other regimens like bismuth quadruple regimen, concomitant regimen, sequential regimen, hybrid regimen, levofloxacin triple regimen, levofloxacin sequential regimen, or there is a regimen called load regimen. And most of the clarithromycin triple regimen, bismuth quadruple and concomitant regime, we have to give it for at least of 10 to 14 days duration. Whereas the other 5 regimes, if you give it for a week duration, it is enough. And other patient compliance is also an important factor. If the patient doesn't comply for the whole duration, the patient may develop resistance for that particular antibiotic, and we might need to escalate for higher antibiotics. This regime is available in Harrison and many other journals. You can go through it, which will be very useful for day-to-day practice. What are the other general measures we take to prevent this acid peptic disease? We must avoid cigarette smoking, avoid alcohol, and avoid aspirin and NSAIDs for unnecessary reasons. We must always advise the patients to avoid these 3 main causative agents. Surgical treatment, only the emergency conditions like perforation and hemorrhage, those are the indications for surgery. The common operational procedures are Pylo or Billroth to gastrectomy, gastrojejunostomy or frontal vagotomy, and drainage. These are the common surgical procedures which are employed or done for this acid peptic disease. So we'll see the case scenarios and case scenarios which we come across in day-to-day practice, and we shall see how well we have understood the basic mechanism. So supposing a 62 years old male presented with the complaints of hematemesis and melena, he had no pain. He had a medical history of non-ST elevated myocardial infarction for which he has undergone PT, percutaneous coronary intervention, and a bare metal stent insertion is done 4 months ago. Patient has stopped smoking 2 years ago, and patient still drinks alcohol in moderation. Patient is not obese. He was taking the following medications, like he's on dual antiplatelets like aspirin, clopidogrel. He's on ramipril 2.5 mg BD, simvastatin, atenolol, GTN spray. So if you look at this patient, he's an elderly male who had a non-ST elevated MI, for which he had undergone a coronary intervention, and bare metal stent is placed, and he is on dual antiplatelets, and he presented with the complaints of melena and hematemesis. What investigations would you like to ask for this patient? So we have ordered for a few investigations, and we'll see what are the investigations look like. The hemoglobin is 8. There is a drop in hemoglobin. The BP is 160. There is a drop in BP. Tachycardia is there, and the respiratory rate is normal. There is no jaundice or any stigma of liver disease. Urea is normal. Creatinine is normal. Even the INR is also normal. Electrolytes are normal. Endoscopy revealed active bleeding ulcer. So all the investigations are normal except for the drop in hemoglobin. Because of this hematemesis or melena, there is a drop in hemoglobin. Why did the patient have melena and hematemesis? He had an actively bleeding gastric ulcer. So there is a drop in BP also. Patient is in shock. So how do you manage this case? First of all, you need to give IV fluids, either crystalloids or colloids. You must bring up the BP. And then during the endoscopy, you can try to cauterize, or you can do a clipping. Usually what specialists do is they inject adrenaline 1:10,000 dilation adrenaline, which will constrict the local bleeding vessels. Then you must advise a high dose PPIs. You must usually start an infusion at 8 mg per hour infusion, and a loading dose of 80 mg of pantoprazole or any PPI. And in view of recent PCI, percutaneous coronary intervention, he is placed on dual antiplatelets, which will act synergistically and tend to cause more gastric irritation and more ulceration in the stomach or duodenum, which will lead to bleeding also. So we can't avoid these dual platelets. So we advise PPAs, BD. There we advise omeprazole 20 mg BD or pantoprazole 40 mg BD initially until the gastric ulcer heals. And when we advise for an endoscopy, always we'll look in the lines of H. pylori infection, whether the patient had an H. pylori infection. So we try to take the biopsies, and we'll do for an H. pylori detection. And when there are chances of false negative, as the patient has a bleeding, so we might ask for a urea breath test once the patient recovers from this acute episode also. So H. pylori evaluation is must in any gastric ulcer or duodenal ulcer at that point or later after patient recovering from the acute episode. So what are the steps? Endoscopy, we try to evaluate for H. pylori infection. We cauterize, clip, or give an adrenaline injection to stop that acute episode. Then we administer high dose PPIs initially for a period. and then we must restore back or restart the aspirin after a week time because he had an acute when he had a coronary event recently. That's it. That's how we manage the case of this particular case. So we shall see the other case. A 55 years old woman presents with the symptoms of epigastric pain, which has interfered with her normal activities over previous few weeks. Medication history reveals the patient takes low prescribed medications and occasional paracetamol as an analgesic for minor alignments. Although she has occasional heartburn, she is not a predominant symptom. Patient has not vomited or does not have any difficulty in pain or swallowing. Patient has no loss of weight recently and she has normal stools with no evidence of bleeding. Pain is not precipitated by exercise or doesn't radiate to the arms or neck. Patient is a non-smoker and only takes a small quantity of alcohol on social occasions. She is allergic to penicillin. So if you look at this case scenario, just the epigastric pain is the only presenting complaints, which doesn't interfere her with her normal activities. And there is the symptoms doesn't correlate with any cardiac also. The symptoms are not suggestive of any cardiac illness also. She's a non-smoker. Just a small quantity of alcohol in social occasions, even that is not a risk factor. So if you look at her age, only the age is the only risk factor for this female, no other complaints. So in this patient, if there is a no weight, this particular case scenario, there is a loss of weight, then you might suspect a gastric carcinoma. So, but she doesn't have any weight loss also. Food intake is adequate. There is no difficulty in swallowing or anything. So this case, we think in lines of H. pylori infection. So we evaluate further and we treat it. We give a course of H. pylori eradication for a week or two, depending on the regime. If the patient doesn't recover from the symptoms, then we plan for an endoscopy and evaluate further. So we'll see other case, 68 years old woman, presents for her review of her medication. Her medical history includes hypertension, osteoarthritis of the knees. She receives a regular prescription for bendroflumetazide and naproxen. She stopped smoking 4 years previously and drinks about 10 units of alcohol per week. She is overweight. Her BMI is 30. Patient occasionally purchases an antacid to treat symptoms of heartburn if she has eaten a large meal at night. Her blood pressure is 148 by 90 with pulse rate of 82 beats per minute. If you look at her investigations, all are normal. Our electrolytes, creatinine, glucose, cholesterol. Our cholesterol is on little higher end, whereas hemoglobin is normal. So how do you evaluate this case? When you look into this case, the patient is an elderly, overweight with the osteoarthritis, who is on NSAIDs. When you look into the habits also, she has stopped smoking and even the alcohol is also more or less in the normal range per week. So the more major risk factors for this patient is BMI, overweight, age, and NSAID. These three are the more major risk factors. So what is causing her main complaint? We contribute the NSAIDs for her presenting complaints. So in this patient, we advise her to decrease her weight. She is overweight. So which in turn will reduce the burden on her knees. So that NSAID use can be decreased. Or if at all she is having severe pain which is unbearable or intolerable, we advise for a COX-2 inhibitors which has lesser gastric side effects. And we advise not to take any steroids. And we give her an PPAs. We administer, we give her a PPA and evaluate for H. pylori infection. If the H. pylori infection turns out to be positive, then we'll give an eradication schedule. And all these patients, whoever we have given these PPAs, we will ask them to review after a couple of weeks or a month to take their feedback, how the complaints are, whether they are symptom free. And we must plan for a tapering of PPAs, as they might long-term use might have many side effects like osteopenia and CKD and other vitamin absorption difficulties will be there. Malabsorption might be, patient might develop a malabsorption. So in any case, whether it's an NSAID induced or it's an aspirin induced or anything, you must always evaluate for the H. pylori infection when you come across this acid peptic disease. So any discussion or doubts, you can come out and ask the questions. Questions? If no questions, we'll wind up the session another 5 to 10 minutes. Gastric ulcer is a very common disease we come across. We ourselves might experience this, large meals or binge eating. Our family members might experience, elderly people. So we must know how to evaluate the case. An exam point of view, this is in short notes, or sometimes it can come as a essay also. So please go back and go through the Davidson. It's a very short topic. You can finish it in an hour or so. I have just given an overview. So if no questions, we shall end this session. Thank you.